morning, everyone, and welcome to Women in High Tech's Q2 Executive Women's Forum focused on entrepreneurship and STEM. At some point, a lot of us have contemplated doing our own thing. We've dreamt of a day to follow our passions and take a step out on our own. So today, we're going to hear from an incredible panel of entrepreneurs and executives turned entrepreneurs to discuss their journey and answer your questions. Thank you so much to this esteemed group of leaders for sharing your time and expertise with us today. We're so excited to have you with us and to learn from you today. And thank you so much to all of our virtual guests for spending some time with us this morning. I'm Rebecca Borman. I'm the Managing Director of Sales and Services for Bone Technologics, an Indiana-based national leading IT managed services firm. And I also have the pleasure of serving as the President of Women in High Tech. For those of you who may be new to our organization, Women in High Tech exists to change the landscape of women represented in STEM to be equally inclusive to all. The idea began in 1999 when an Eli Lilly scientist and an Indiana University academic discovered very few women working in high-tech jobs in Indianapolis. So these women decided to change the paradigm and founded Women in High Tech as a new nonprofit organization. To achieve our mission, Women in High Tech works to connect female STEM professionals with each other in our Indiana STEM community. Our members and sponsors represent a wide variety of STEM fields, including life sciences, accounting, engineering, psychology, statistics, IT, and so much more. Our members work as engineers, analysts, scientists, business developers, marketers, educators, and so many other STEM roles. There's also no denying that the STEM fields have long been male-dominated. That's not because the people in them don't want change. It's because organizations like Women in High Tech need support to make that change happen. From guiding young women through some of their very first science experiments and recognizing industry-leading experts in our signature biannual Leading Light Awards and Scholarship Gala, we provide a support system and networking opportunities to engage female STEM professionals, collegiate women, and girls who aspire to pursue STEM careers. When we work together on a level playing every day, we promote, support, and cheer on the women and male allies working to make it happen in order to change the landscape of women represented in STEM to be equally inclusive to all. Over the last 2 decades, Women in High Tech has blazed a trail for supporting, recognizing, and advancing outstanding women and girls pursuing STEM fields in Indiana. In that time, Women in High Tech has become a pillar of the local STEM community through its educational, professional development, recognition, mentoring, and networking programs, which include valuable resources to champion collegiate and career women, along with STEM exposure opportunities for K-12 girls. Today, Women in High Tech has over 50 corporate and collegiate sponsors and almost 2,000 members in Indiana. So I want to take a moment and thank all of our sponsors for their continued support and engagement. We appreciate your generosity in helping us to continue our mission. I also have to take a moment to thank Women in High Tech's all volunteer working board of directors and emeritus members and our member volunteers. Without these ladies and gentlemen, Women in High Tech wouldn't be possible. So thank you all for sharing your time, talents, and treasures with Women in High Tech. And a big special shout out to our Executive Forum Director, Linda Calvin, for bringing this event today. You'll get to meet her and our fantastic panelists here in just a few moments. But before we get today's event started, I want to share with you a couple of Women in High Tech's upcoming events, including our new multicultural celebration. This event is going to be held June 9th at the Indiana State Museum Great Hall, and it's our first in-person event since the start of the pandemic. The event is going to be an evening of cultural education, festivity, food, and networking. Women in High Tech created this inaugural signature event to celebrate and appreciate the unity, authenticity, and cultural diversity imbued by the collective body of women in STEM that enhances, enriches, and empowers our local community and statewide STEM landscape to grow a pipeline of female talent driving innovation here in Indiana. Our celebration will feature culturally diverse hors d'oeuvres and dinner, networking with other STEM professionals, and honoring the Health and Science Innovations High School STEM Summer Camp Award recipients. We'll also have fun dancing and enjoying festive tunes from the live band chamber music. And just I want to make sure everybody knows, this probably goes without saying, but Women in High Tech will follow all CDC regulations with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic for this event, and masks and social distancing will be required. So tickets are on sale now. We hope you join us. Go ahead and register. And we look forward to seeing you to celebrate our diversity and embrace our unity. One other thing I'd like to share is that we have our second quarter virtual book club coming up. That's on June 21st from 6 to 7. And we're currently reading The Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Gazi. So it's not too late to grab the book and join us. Please register on our website for this virtual discussion. We have a lot more in store for you this year. So if you haven't already, please go to our website and subscribe on our email list so you can stay in touch for information on future programming, volunteering opportunities, and Women in High Tech's newsletters. Okay, I'm so excited to continue with our program this afternoon. So thanks again to all of our panelists for joining us. We're thrilled to be able to speak with you today. And now I'd like to introduce you to our Executive Women's Forum Director, Linda Calvin. Linda?
Thank you, Rebecca, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day in central Indiana, sunny and warm, and we are so glad to have you on this day. And I'm totally geeked to talk with our panelists. First, I want to do a bit of a plug for our next Executive Women's Forum session, which is happening on June 24th. And on that session, we'll be talking about your cyber hygiene report card. Now, you're probably thinking, I don't know anything about a cyber hygiene report card, but you do. If you are on Zoom and Teams on a regular basis, you need to attend this session and learn from these experts about the do's and don'ts of being online, just even to the point of where you sit in your office. So at that event, we'll be joined by the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Lilly, Meredith Harper, Shatrice Mosley, who is the Cybersecurity Director for the Department of Homeland Security for the state of Indiana, and Nicole Sigler, who is the Senior Security Consultant at Ponderance. So you might be surprised at your score once you attend this session. So please get that on your calendar, June 24th, 11:30 on that day. The next one will be, we hope, in person, where everyone can feel comfortable attending in October, and that will be a networking event where we will have a session on the importance of networking. Statistically, it is proven that women don't network as well as men. A lot of that because of how we were raised to be seen and not heard, and we're gentle and fragile. Yeah, none of that. We're going to have a great networking session and then put it to practice in October, so stay tuned for more information. So with that, let's get started. And first, what I want to do is introduce our panelists today. So I will start in alphabetically. So first, Kristen Cooper, who is the CEO and founder of Startup Ladies. The Startup Ladies is a professional organization that educates and connects and increases investment in women entrepreneurs starting up scalable businesses. So hello, Kristen, and thank you for joining. Our next panelist is Daryl Johnson, who is the founder of Ideation to Valuation. He has more than 20 years experience in strategic business creation, growth, ownership, and advisory roles. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he's going to be awesome. So thank you and welcome, Daryl. Next is Joy Mason, and she is the president, founder, and senior business strategist for Optimus Business Solutions. She's a certified Six Sigma Black Belt with 30 years experience working in pharmaceutical manufacturing and testing. So please, thank you. Please welcome Joy Mason, and thank you for being here. And finally, Irma Mesa, who is originally from Miami, but moved to Indianapolis. Lucky for us. I'm sure there are some days where she's not thinking that's so lucky. She's the founder and CEO of Cafecito, an online platform that facilitates organic virtual coffee chats for individuals and organizations worldwide. So she has joined us today as well. So thank you, Irma, for being here. So let's start with this. And I saw this the other day as I was watching some shows on History Channel. So This is an entrepreneur story. I'm a foodie, so it really appealed to me. So for those of you who are familiar with White Castle, that idea started because ground meat was considered just completely gross. It wasn't back in the 20s. If you ate ground meat, that was peasant food. And so typically it was served out of dirty, greasy spoons. But there was one man who was committed to cleanliness and hygiene. And he had a small kitchen and he made little teeny hamburgers in little round patties. And so one day someone was sitting at his counter waiting for this round little patty of meat. And they were complaining because they're like, dude, I need to get back to work. And they probably did say dude in the 30s or 40s. But so he had this little ball and he's looking at it and the guy keeps complaining. And he's like, fine, this is what I'll do. And he smashed it down with his spatula. Lo and behold, the patty finished cooking quickly. And then he looked at it, and it's amazing when you watch the story because he's looking at it like this. And he's like, how do I get this on a bun? So he figured out to put it on a dinner roll. And after he entered into a partnership with someone else, White Castle was born. And so this story actually led to the birth of a multi-billion-dollar fast food, not McDonald's. This was the precursor to McDonald's. Now that to me, before I saw that Sunday night and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to tell that story because I was fascinated by how you had an idea, but this was smash. And then it was like, wow, what an awesome idea. So starting off with that story, but now let's share some statistics with you from CEO of Startup Ladies, Kristen Cooper. In 2020, women founders received less than 3% of the 156.2 billion invested in startups. Let me say that again, 3% of 156.2 billion. Only 7% of women serve as CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. And if I may take that a step further, I think there's only one Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and that's Rosalind Brewer, recently named as the CEO of Walgreens. Women hold less than 20% of the board seats on companies in the S&P 500 index. Less than 2% of women business owners generate 1 million in annual revenue, and 90% of women-owned businesses have no employees. So, wow. I mean, when you think about that, it's startling, right? And so that's going to be the basis for a lot of conversation today. We're here to inspire you. If you have those questions about how I get started, I'm scared, which is mine. I'm scared. How do I go out? Is a leap of faith? Can I plan? So we're going to talk about that today. The E is for entrepreneurship. Please put your questions in the Q&A. And we want this to be truly interactive because we know people out there, this is on their minds. So please put those questions in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring and I will make sure and pose those to our panelists. So with that, let's start from the start. And we want to understand today, what was the catalyst for pulling the trigger to start something? So I would like to hear from Joy and Irma. So what was the catalyst for you, Joy, that you decided, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing?
Thank you, Linda. And this is a really exciting opportunity to share my story, because I just find that when you share your story, then those are listening and you don't know who's listening. It's going to inspire someone because they'll find something in common. We always have something in common. So thanks for the opportunity. Actually, about 20 years ago, I had a thought that I didn't act upon. And I actually attended a business workshop that was hosted by the Indianapolis Chamber. But again, I didn't act upon it because I was at Lilly, and back in the late 80s and 90s, you have the golden handcuffs. I mean, you just didn't leave Lilly, right? And if you even talked about leaving Lilly, somebody would say you're crazy. And that's understandable because there's security. Again, that's where the golden handcuffs come in. But as a Black woman, I had my experiences in corporate. And Linda, I think we know that could be another webinar, right? About the experiences of Black women in corporate. In fact, I think I've seen some data that says the group that is leaving in the largest numbers from corporate is Black women because of the challenges that we have in the workplace. So I think it was probably when I was 25 years into Lilly, to be frank, I just decided I didn't want the corporate life anymore. When you're in corporate, and I'm sure many of you know this, you're subjected to the limitations, the box, the ceiling. Decisions about your career are in the hands of someone else who is most likely a white male in terms of where you can go, how much you can grow. And frankly, I didn't like that anymore. And I wanted to be happy. I wanted to have my destination in my own hands. So the spark, it really accumulated over the course of time, and I wanted freedom. I wanted to be on my own terms. I wanted to express my own creativity in my own way, wanted independence, and I was ready to take some risk. I wasn't ready before. So just to kind of close out the story, so 5 years prior to my departure, I knew I would not be the person who would be at Lilly until I was 65. I couldn't, no, that wasn't going to happen. So I had a time, I created a plan because that's my business, process and plans, strategy. 5 years before I knew I would leave, I had a 5-year plan. And that consisted of networking, talking to people, just finding out how other women did it, talking to people like Tresetta Briggs and Holly Harrington. She didn't start her own business, but she left. And just other, Deborah Wilson at Engaging Solutions. So just talking to a lot of people. And that's what I would put out there to the listeners. Talk to other women who have done it because they will encourage you, they will inspire you, they will uplift you, help you walk through the fear because the fear is going to be there. And 5 years, it was 2017, and I left. And it's from talking to the other women that I knew that I could do it. So it was a process, it was a journey. But if you want to say if you asked what gave me the oomph to finally get out there, it was the inspiration from other women who made that leap.
Awesome, Joy. And I think I'm going to type in some lessons, and I may miss some. So please feel free to contribute to the lessons in the chat. But lesson 1, talk to other women or men who started up. And with that, Irma, please share your story on what was the catalyst for you to start something?
Yeah, and totally echo everything Joy has said thus far, 100%. So for me, for context, I come from a product background. So I've been working in tech, mainly in really small startups, leading engineering teams, leading product teams, shipping products all the time. And so because of that, when I look at the world, I see a lot of problems that I want to find solutions for. So I always had this like running list of like ideas like that I potentially in the future would want to tap into, or I don't know, share with people. It was a nice way to just like, as I'm walking around life and looking at like, you know, the mailbox, like it's just something I could do around this to fix it, to make it a better experience for the end user. And so when I kind of like my thinking of that is it influences everything I do. So when I started to, you know, work remotely, one of the first things I noticed was just the isolation that comes with it, right? You're sitting at your desk for 8 hours a day, you're meeting to meeting, there's barely any breaks, so your productivity is going down. You're also isolated. And so long-term, you don't see the effects of isolation, but isolation actually impacts your mental health and physical health long-term. So you can contribute to depression, anxiety, many other risk factors. And so for me, I did that for a year. My productivity decreased. And I was like, just on a cycle every day, like wake up, go to work, go to sleep, wake up, go to work, go to sleep. And it was like that for a year. And I felt like I didn't have passion for my job anymore. I wasn't motivated. And so I started to sort of seek out there, you know, for a remote worker, what are things that, you know, we can do to feel like we're part of something, feel like we belong. And I couldn't really find anything. And so that was an idea that I wrote down. I was like, what if there was a way for remote workers to just like meet each other? they're having a break, instead of having it by themselves, have it with somebody else. Left that idea for about a year. I didn't really do much with it. I was like doing light research here and there, keeping my eye out for things. And that's how the approach that I take with some of my ideas. I kind of let them sit. I let them sit for a while and kind of see, like, you know, is anybody else going to do something? And if not, then I'll usually do something if I'm really obviously motivated and passionate about that problem. So with Cafecito and just like my work around bring people together, connecting folks, creating a software platform around the problem I'm solving, the big catalyst for me was just not seeing anybody do anything about it, and just knowing that the more that remote work became so popular, and because of COVID, it ended up, you know, being that trend. But I didn't want to just like not do anything and let people fail, right? I wanted folks to get into remote work, have a really good experience, share that it's the best way to work around the world, share that it's flexible, share that you are feeling like you're part of a team, that you belong. And so when I didn't see anything around that, I was just like, I got to do something. And so that's where I kind of got that little push, was like, I didn't see anybody attacking the problem from an isolation standpoint, how we could improve that for people who are working from home. And that's where we are today, on what sort of pushed me to make that little leap. It's scary though, I will say, and I know we'll talk about that later, but it is a scary leap to make.
And that gets to the next. Oh, go ahead, Kristen. Yes.
Question for Irma. Irma, can you walk us through what the user experience is? Because I bet a lot of listeners are like, there's so many platforms out there like that, but they may not understand how different it really is what you've developed. So give us a persona and what's it like for them?
Yeah, so right now our consumer product basically is for entrepreneurs and freelancers. So they log in, they create a profile, we take in your interests, which are basically what we match you on. So we have an algorithm in the background that basically says, like, you know, Kristen and Linda probably have entrepreneurship in common, and we'll bring them together via a virtual chat. And so that's our consumer product. And then we also have a business product that does basically the same thing, but within a group. So for example, if women in high tech were to use Cafecito, we can connect folks on, you know, math, folks that have interest in math with other folks that have interest in math. So kind of like create those connections. And the user experience for the end user, it's very simple. All we're doing is getting a little bits of information and then creating connections for you, which you can do virtually and hopefully in the future in person, which would be really cool. But yeah, it's all about connection. It's supposed to be very simple, very straightforward. Like, we don't want to make it, we don't want there to be friction when you're using a product like ours.
Cool. Excellent. And I put, everyone, I put links to all of the panelists' websites in the chat, so you can check out their product offerings. And, you know, you touched on something, Irma, so let's just go there, right? And it's the thing that I shared with all of you when we first spoke, is fear. So first, you know, Joy, let me start with you. Like, how did you manage the fear factor? Or maybe you weren't afraid, but you know, you go from having a structure to every day I show up, I've got my benefits, I know I'm going to get paid, there's not going to be any interruption in pay, all of this beautiful, as you said, the golden handcuffs. How did you get over fear of, I'm going to leave all of that behind and I'm going to do my own thing?
Linda, that's a good question. And I go back to what I mentioned before, and that is talking to other women who did it. They made the leap. So they inspired me, and also realizing that there is going to be fear. So I couldn't wait until a moment where the fear was gone. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Even the women who had made the leap, they had fear, past tense. And at the time that I talked to them, they still have fear, because you don't know, you know, with your income, it varies from month to month. So I think that's the big thing, where I don't think you get over it, you know. So if that's what someone who is kind of waiting and saying, okay, I got to get over the fear, that's what's holding you back. You don't get over the fear. You walk through the fear. And I do have to say, I am a spiritual person. I am a Christian. So there is some scripture that talks about you walk through the valleys. It's not like you stand and you kind of look at the valley and you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. You do it by, you put one foot in front of the other and you walk through the valley. And then you'll look back and you'll go, oh my gosh, I walked through it. And what I have found just over a 4-year period, that every time I walk through a valley, it just gives me more strength that I can keep walking through valleys. So the fear will come, the valleys will come, because even as an entrepreneur, it's going to be up and down. But the more you do it, the more energy you get. And again, and when you get into a valley, you call one of your girls and you say, girl, I'm going through it. And then she'll say, I'm going through it too. And you're on the phone for about an hour. You get off. Nothing's been solved, but you supported each other. I mean, but you supported each other, and you know you're not alone, and you wake up and you confront the fear and you walk through the valley again the next day.
And now you can call your guy too.
Yes.
Yes.
Dude, no, Linda. Dude, man, I'm going through it there.
Irma, what about you? Can you speak to that? Like that, because you mentioned it too, that fear of, I have an idea. You know, it makes me, honestly, and I'm telling you the truth, I have butterflies right now in my stomach as you guys are talking about it, because I can't get over that feeling. It's like, so I mean, how did you attack it, Irma? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I will say, like, I think fear is very normal. I don't think, we at all, like, it shouldn't be a thing that we think that we don't have. I think a lot of us probably do have it. And so it's good to know that a lot of us do feel that as we're starting new things and as we're putting ourselves out there. I think for me, I've always seen trying new things. And I think it goes back to that quote of just doing the uncomfortable, right? You're not learning if you're not feeling uncomfortable. And so for me, kind of having that as my goal, North Star, I guess, like, is what I'm doing, am I complacent right now? And so if the answer is yes, I'll try to find something new to do or new problems to solve. And so with what I worked on with the platform that I'm doing right now, in the beginning, I was like, I don't want to launch this. Like, is it even valuable? There's competitors out there, like all these different, doubts essentially. And the biggest thing that I think helped me was, of course, seeing it as a learning opportunity. Like, I'm never going to know if it's going to work if I don't put it out there. And so if it does fail, like, that's okay. I can move on to the next thing or pivot, right? You have options. Like, if you fail at something, it's not a dead end. It's more so, like, for me at least, I think it's an opportunity to grow and to try something new. And so that's how I looked at my current fear. And like Joy said, I think fear for me is like an everyday thing in the smallest ways. Speaking is a fear, like reaching out to cold to a potential customer is a fear, right? Those are all fears that for me, I have to get over each day, because if I don't do that, I don't move forward. So it's kind of like walking through that fear, like Joe was mentioning.
Yeah, and Linda, if I could just add something to what Irma said, because she triggered a thought. Some of my early mentors, because I even remember there was a huge networking event that the chamber sponsored. It was high-level people, mayors from different cities within Indiana. And I registered, I walked in, and my mentor came in about the same time, and I told him, I am so nervous and my hands were sweating. And he said, there was something about that moment where he said, just be you. And so that's what I focused on, just be me. And what I realized is that, yes, I have a business. I think there's some uniqueness to it, but there are others probably out there, but nobody's me. And so when people sign a contract, they don't know the details of what I'm going to provide. But what I am trying to do is build some integrity and a brand of trust and show that it's about the relationship. So they sign a contract because they believe in me. So there's content, but if I focus on just be me, I don't have to be something else. I don't have to acquire other skills. I don't have to compare myself to somebody else. And that has really, that's made a difference in calming my fears. I think fears come from some expectation that you have to be a certain way, act a certain way, do a certain thing, present your product in a certain way. And I think when you get past that, where it's like, just be me, people are signing a contract because they believe in me. I am the brand. It's about the relationship. There's something about that just kind of brings it down a little bit.
I love that. I am the brand. Kristen and Daryl, what thoughts do you have here on overcoming the fear, or walking through the fear, or channeling the fear into fuel? What are your thoughts?
Ladies first.
So I agree with Irma and Joy in that, I mean, I have an anxiety disorder. So my norm is to have some kind of fear all day, every day. And I manage it through medication and therapy. So I know my norm from it's measured. One of the things that Joy mentioned is something that would literally cause me a panic attack if I was in my 20s or early 30s. So if there are younger people here today, I learned from Oprah Winfrey years ago, who was, I think Sidney Poitier was the person she was most nervous about interviewing, and Gail was like, just be you. And so Oprah was like, yeah, that's all I need to do. And I remember when Oprah told the story, I was terrified because I just didn't know me yet. And I don't think I really knew me or really liked me until I was 38, because a series of things had happened. So I think that statement that's so simple and encouraging, for me, caused me panic. So it's like different for everybody, right? And if you're older, if you're established, if you know who you are, just by virtue of practicing and experiencing being in difficult situations, everything becomes easier. I mean, Irma talked about how you have to suspend yourself in uncomfortable space in order to figure out who you are. And once you do it enough, you just get better at being you. And when you know who you are, no matter what you do, you're going to be better with everything. People will be more comfortable around you because you're more comfortable around you. So fear for me, it's a norm. My norm is I will always deal with fear. And what I can do is prepare for how I know I will feel and for what is going to come up in the meetings. Because for me, every meeting is about, and I'd love to hear Dale's or Daryl's perspective on this. Every meeting I have is some form of sales, because you're trying to assess the person, better understand them, and figure out how you can work together with them in some capacity in the short or long term. So I think it's normalizing fear, it's preparing, and then understanding what is it that you and your business can get out of every kind of conversation you have, and then figuring out what is it that you can do to help propel your relationship forward with that person, and figure out how can you help them take a step forward or connect to somebody. Daryl, what do you think in regards to, like, when you meet people, how do you deal with both, like, is every meeting sales for you? Is it not? And then how do you deal with the fear?
I think for me, fear is, as you all have described it, and as Joy mentioned, as a Christian man, I've heard a million different analogies for fear. Future events appearing real, is one that often pops in my mind. And in my mental board of directors, fear has a seat at the table and always has some good things to say. Typically, I find that fear is telling me places where I have not done research. It's telling me about perhaps some things that I haven't thought through, about something that I'm going to try that's new. The one thing I do know about fear is it's a liar. And so it really comes down to, if I'm trying to do something and I have some fear about it, I'm not ready to do it yet. There's something that's telling me that I'm not ready to do it. Once I actually understand what the fear is telling me I'm not ready to do, I may agree or I may disagree. The fact that I have fear doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, though. It just is another double check I have to do, but I've already made up in my mind that I'm going to do it. I also will do some mental rationalizing. So I may be fearful of speaking on this event, but will anybody be harmed because I'm speaking? Will babies die if I speak? Will I be beaten unconscious if I speak? If any of those things are going to happen, then I legitimately probably have some fear. If it's just because I haven't done it before, if it's just because I may sound crazy or do something stupid, I often might even do that right up front. Get it out the way. Just help yourself get it out the way, because I don't think it's really going to be a real, all we're dealing with humans, right? If I'm scared, you're scared. There's something you're scared of, just like me, right? What I found though often is in coaching with folks is it's like 95% unfounded most times. So after we go do the thing and come back and talk about it post doing it, I really had no reason to be scared. Everybody loved it. And so if you see that over and over again, particularly in a number of different people, you have to know that it's probably going to be the same for you. It's probably whatever this thing is that you're fearful of. Once you do it a few times, the fear will be gone. And you just have to know that the only way I'm going to get to it is to go through it. That's how I have to play with fear. It's a good tool, because sometimes it has shown me, again, some real wisdom and gaps that I wasn't seeing. But most times it's a liar. It's really not as big as we think it is. If you were to go find fear, go to its address and knock on the door, I swear it's probably about this tall.
That's good.
Love that. And because Daryl and Kristen, that look to you as mentors and the veterans here, will you share your story about like how you arrived? Kristen, how did you arrive at Startup Ladies? And because I think when I think of fear and overcoming and how to get started, I think of Startup Ladies. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. So like, you navigated this and now it's your craft. So like, how did you get started? How did Startup Ladies start?
So I'm probably a slower learner, and I didn't know I ever wanted to own a business until I was 29 and I got hit by a car. Like my body got hit by a car, and I was getting x-rayed, and like I had 3 crystal clear thoughts. One was I had met the love of my life. 2, I had traveled a good amount for the age, but I wanted to do more. And then 3, I knew I just wanted to start a business. And that was because I had spent a decade as a fundraiser. I was living in Southern California, and I was raising money during the .com biotech and real estate boom. So I was surrounded by entrepreneurs left and right. And so I didn't go into my career thinking I really want to start up a business. I actually went into my career having no idea what I wanted to do. I got a fundraising gig, happened to be good at it. And you know how sometimes like you're good enough, you keep getting promoted, but you don't love what you do? I mean, that was me, totally. So after I had that kind of realization, that was at 29, I always had the awareness, but I didn't have an idea. And I wasn't really wound up about anything. So then I moved to Indianapolis. And to be frank, I love it now. It's my home. I've lived here for 16 years. However, I had never encountered more of the isms than I had encountered everywhere. So I'm from the East Coast, lived in California, came here, also lived abroad. I also, because I was a fundraiser, you always have a nice Rolodex because you spend a lot of free time with wealthy people, trying to get to know them and trying to represent your cause and find things that you can work on together. The challenge for me was that I did not want to spend free time with anyone in my Rolodex. And my foray into tech was the very early version of what Irma is building now, which is why I love her platform and her so much. I literally just wanted to find people that I wanted to hang with. And so I wanted to go out and build Match.com for friends. And so I just started, like Joy did, started talking about it. And I was positioned, so I had a lot of good contacts. And so, I just started drafting some things. And then I went and talked to the former CEO of TechPoint, because we actually our offices were right next to one another. And I bounced it off of him, and I was expecting him to talk me out of it, when in fact he said, I think you have a viable business model. And the fact that you are a woman in the tech space, this could bode well for you. So I began this is back 2011, 2012, and just started having conversations left and right, started going to all the tech events. And in the process, I learned a ton and I loved it. And again, I didn't know what people were talking about most of the time. And I was always taking notes and looking things up. And what I learned quickly, if I miss a word, like I would sometimes lean over to someone and be like, did you hear what he said? And it was always a he. Or I'd be at the buffet or, at the bar and be like, hey, what do you think about X? The boys club had no idea what the experts were actually talking about. They were just there to network. And I was just like, this does not match up for me. Like, you all kind of position yourselves and you have this bravado, this sense of entitlement, this sense of I am the authority. And they didn't know what a lot of the experts were talking about. And the thing that drove me nuts was how it was like the boys looked after the boys, they'd pull each other over to introduce one another. And I can't tell you the number of times I was in a circle of people. I'm sure some of you have heard me say this before. The guys would extend their hands to shake the hands of the other people in the circle, but they wouldn't shake mine. And I was just like, hey, look, I have not even had the opportunity to piss you off yet. So give me the opportunity, right? So anyway, it was that combination of the environment was male dominated. I never felt like somebody wanted to put their arm around me and bring me in. All of the technology and science being built was so white, cisgender, straight, male motivated. And I was like, man, there's so many other cool things going on, things that I'm interested in. And I didn't know what a market was at the time, but I was like, I just need to be around cool people who are interested in building businesses that have a comfort with tech. So I essentially got to meet these two awesome people. My buddies, Yao Anning and Anthony Smith, they just won 2 Mira Awards last week. They're now building Malomo. Anyway, these guys introduced me to tech. 11 years younger than me, wanted to teach. They wanted to teach me and they wanted me to introduce them to people. It was like a perfect relationship. And so constantly, they would be a mentor, I would be the mentee. And then in the next meeting, we'd switch, right? So it all depended on what we were doing, who was teaching and who was learning. And so they taught me. I was with them for 3 years. I was running operations. And I really learned how to build technology. I understood how you went from problem to build a little, collect feedback, iterate, keep going until it gets product market fit. So it was within weeks of joining them that I started Startup Ladies. It was just a meetup. It was a way for women to hang out and talk about, let's build businesses, let's build tech. And it just morphed. We had people that kept coming, people that became more interested. So we went from meetup to movement to scalable startup. And now we're an LLC. We have almost 200 members. We're in 6 different states. And we're about to grow, to expand our footprint. So was I scared? Yeah, I'm always scared. I think some of the best entrepreneurs are people who pick a problem that has got to be solved. And they're like a dog with a bone that's not giving it up. And so I think sometimes when people start companies because they want to sell the widget and make a boatload, there's a methodology for that. You can do that. I think those that are particularly interested in making a social impact and want to go through the methodology of going from idea to market to growth, I think those people are going to be the ones that over the next 5 to 10 years, they're the ones that are going to be able to secure the investment to really scale.
Awesome. And that leads me to my next question. But before I get to it, Daryl, I'd like to hear from you. Similar to Kristen, did you always know you were going to do your own thing? I mean, how did you arrive where you're at? And you have multiple things happening, right? So where did you go? And then I have a question I'm ready to ask.
So my path is interesting. I remember being in school and totally not liking school at all. It was actually the biggest interruption to my day because I like to play. I like to do what I like to do. And this thing called school is just utterly and completely in my way. When I got out of high school, I knew I wasn't going to college. I was going to be the next billionaire that didn't have a high school degree, of stories, success stories that I read about where people pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And so at 2021, I had 2 cell phone and paging stores. I grew up in northern Michigan in Traverse City, and you couldn't tell me anything. And then the bottom fell out, and I had to go back into the market. And in order to maintain that same lifestyle, I had to have 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, whilst my friends that went to college, you know, they're working 32 hours a week. They got paid vacation. They got time off. And it wasn't until I met my wife where she convinced me to go back in school. So I was a late bloomer for school. But what college, one thing that college showed me is, you know, there is something good about getting the knowledge that it requires to be successful in a thing. And in entrepreneurship, there is a set of knowledge that will help you be successful in a thing. And coming down to Indianapolis, I started working for an organization that was 350, 400 entrepreneurs and about 180 corporations as the membership. So my job was to support the corporate members through a fundraising effort and matchmaking effort to drive opportunities from the corporations down to the diverse suppliers. Is what was the focus, part of a national organization. And those folks that were entrepreneurs, I looked at them like heroes. They were those were the superheroes to me. Those folks that brave, you know, do that Irma and Joy thing. And I really looked up to those folks. And then one of those folks hired me. And one of the reasons they hired me is because I had a lot of relationships and I could sell. And so I started working for them. But man, all of those other entrepreneurs that I was working with, and a lot of them around the country, would continue to call me and ask me for advice and ask me for my ideas. And they would pull me into their go-to-market strategy conversations. And they would talk to me about their sales processes and how they scale their businesses. And about 3 years ago, I cornered one of them and said, why? I get a call every other day, literally, from somebody who says, hey, I was talking to insert a person I respect highly. And I'm starting a business. I don't really know a whole lot, but they said to call you and you'd be able to help me. And I would say, okay, well, I'm tired, but off the respect of the person who sent you, I know why they sent you, because I'm going to take the absolute time to sit down, hear what you're doing, and explain to you my thoughts around things. And this person said, you know, you do that enough. You know, what are you saying to people? And I said, honestly, I say the same thing. It's literally the same thing every time. We go over their business model. We talk about what research they've done. We figure out a go-to-market strategy. We understand their sales process. Is there a methodology for their way to deliver their product? How are you going to scale? It's the exact same thing. And they said, well, why don't you write it down? So about 3 years ago, I went on a whiteboard all night, didn't go to sleep, and wrote out this process. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to take it out of my head, put it online, and then when they call and say, hey, you know, this person referred me, you know, can you help me? I say, yes. Got a pen? Are you by a computer? Go to this site, log in, go through this thing, whatever it is, because I'm getting my time back now. And once you get an understanding of this system, then we can have a conversation. We can talk about your business model. We can talk about what type of research you need to do. And so as that started to take more of a life, I said, wow, this is pretty fun. This is almost a business. Maybe I should try to see if I can do this. And so I was working for a company and I tried it out on my company. And so when you talk about fear, my fear was that I can actually talk. I try to talk about things that people care about, but I'm in sales. So I'm not somebody who's going to talk you into something you don't want. But if it's something that I think is going to help you and you think it's going to help you, we're going to get the deal done. And so they took a leap on me and gave me money and people and a P&L. And now the fear is, oh my goodness, I've actually talked myself into something. Can I actually deliver? Oh Lord, can I deliver? And so I did, and they gave me more, and I did. And so I'm at this point an intrapreneur. I'm not like my heroes. I'm not outside, but the company that I work for and I formed a company. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm leveraging their $25 million credit line. I have people and HR staff, so I'm still not like the Joys and Irmas. I maybe a little credit, but not as much as you want to give them. And then last year, I finally said, to Joy's point, I have to be happy, even if it means I'm going to be scared how we're going to eat. I have to be happy walking this earth and living this life. And so I finally took that jump, and it's been the best thing I've ever done, because I recognize now, for me, success is a system. I've seen it enough times when you go around a merry-go-round a bunch of times, everything around you is moving, but there are some things that just stay the same. Kristen said it best. Someone she talked to told her that she had a good business model. That's the seed that is the core of any entrepreneur's good success formula, is going to have a good, sound business model. Doesn't mean you just go run out and do it, but you first have to have a good, sound business model. And I believed I had a good, sound business model. And if you're somebody who is sitting out there in the audience and you don't know if you have a good, sound business model, you have to do some research. You have to take that thing and go do some research. And again, I can share a lot more detail of how that happens, but there's really about 5 steps that you have to go through in order to see if this is something you want to do. Even you, Linda, you mentioned that you were sitting on something and you were kind of scared, and the comforts of whatever. But if you have something that you're passionate about, and you believe that it's a solve for something in the market, today I think it's not easier. All of it is a challenge, but it's far less challenging to grow a business nowadays, because in some scenarios, it's easier to start a small global business than it is to start a small local business. And I'll say that again, it may be easier to start a small global business than it is to start a small local business. So sometimes it doesn't matter what the people around you are saying or thinking. People can be stupid. Everybody doesn't have good advice. They have opinions, but they don't have good advice. Your market may not be in Indianapolis, even though you are. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about technology now, and COVID certainly opened it up, is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, doesn't mean your customer is in California and Michigan and Bangladesh. And so, I feel like I'm rambling now, but the point is, the success is a system. Everybody can be successful if you follow a system. There should be fear, but success is a system. And that's, I think, the biggest thing I learned.
So there's a question that came in the chat, and you had mentioned it, Irma mentioned it, Joy mentioned it, Kristen, you did too, and that's about the idea. So you have the idea. And so before you get to the business model, you have the idea, right? But how do you pick the idea? How do you, and especially to Irma's point earlier, you have a lot of ideas floating around in your head, right? How do you pick the one and focus on it? And then the follow-up to that is, then how do you know what's in demand? Because I have some great ideas. I had and this is just for a ha-ha, but years and years ago, I had an idea for art, and it was select dog bones for the dog enthusiasts, of dog bones decorated with crystals and Colts things and leather and all kinds of things. And I went and spent hours at the Hobby Lobby picking up all kinds of things. And I came back home and came up with the dog bones, and I Googled it for months. My husband's like, dog decorator, dog bones? And that's crazy. Who wants those things? And it's like, have you gone online and seen all the dog things you can put on a wall? Come on, dude. And, as it ends up, I made a couple of passes at it, but I didn't know also, here's the other thing about the execution of the idea. I didn't know that, hey, I need to primer this. I need to paint this. Oh, how am I going to do this? It was just, I have an idea. And boy, it's so cool. So I'm just going to open this up to all of you to say, how do you focus on the idea? Where do you start with that? I'll call on you first.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start. I'm a little cautious about putting a whole lot of energy into, I gotta find an idea. Because I think it really emerges from probably some of what you're already doing. And I think all of us have kind of talked about that a little bit. If you look at what your skill set is, what you're already doing, what you enjoy, what people come to you already for, the idea is somewhere in that. And also looking at, who else is doing and what does it take to make that idea come to fruition. And I'll give you an example, because what I have seen, Linda, is that a lot of people have cute ideas and they have hobbies. And some people who get into business, the way I see them operating, it's really a hobby. It's not a business. It's something you enjoy doing on the side. And if you have a business, you need a business model in order, you want to be profitable. But when I see this with a lot of women, I hate to say, but there's some embarrassment about wanting to make a profit. Like, I don't want to admit that, hey, I want to be profitable. I don't know what that is about. Because I've noticed that along with there's a gender trend to it. But I've noticed some women that they enjoy doing something, but when it comes to the business side of it, what it takes to apply the business model to it, there's a disconnect. So I think you have to ask yourself, is that really a hobby where I don't care if I make money or not? It doesn't matter if I only have one customer. I don't even have a process. It doesn't need a business model. And I'll give you an example. I love everything sweet potato. So if you remember Forrest Gump, and who was the guy who talked about shrimp? I'll do, shrimp casserole, shrimp scampi, shrimp bread. That is me and sweet potatoes. Look, you've had my sweet potatoes, right? Yeah, you've had them, Linda. I love it. But do I want to make that a business? When I look at what it takes to get my own kitchen, the time that it takes to make the sweet potato dishes that I make, and I look at that, I just like making people happy when they taste my candied yams. I love it when you say, oh my gosh, Joy, your candied yams are out of this world. That's all I need. And I'm not trying to make a profit. I don't want to put the time into it that would take to apply a business model and churn that out. That is a hobby. So that's something that I really impress upon folks to think about. Is it just something you enjoy doing and you make yourself happy and other people happy and the money doesn't matter, versus this is something that was in you. People look to you towards that. And then you do your research, do your research like we talked about before, and talk to other people, research the market, see who else is doing it. And then I really think you don't have to work that hard. This idea and what you need to make into a business, it will emerge from doing that upfront work, and it will just flow. And it makes sense that this is the thing that you need to make into a business.
Awesome.
I think I would add that if you begin with the end in mind, so you take the idea and start thinking about it 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, in the end, what is the idea to get really good at making the sweet potatoes? So you put a lot of time in it, and whenever somebody asks, you've got this down, and now, every other month you go somewhere and open a stand and sell that sweet potato. Is it a side hustle that's now this idea is designed to bring in additional money to the house? Is it designed to replace your income? Where now the sweet potato is going to stop me from going to Lily every day, and I go to, sweetpotato.com and put my time and energy into that so I can replace my income, so it's more of a lifestyle type of business? Is it a business that will have employees in this begin with the end in mind? Is there employees? Are there multiple locations? and you see yourself running the business? Is this something that you want to will to your kids, and this is gonna, be a thing that's gonna be multi-generational? Like, when you pick your idea, begin with the end in mind, and think about, what does this idea look like at scale? Sometimes a side hustle is the end, to bring in additional $500 to $1,000. But sometimes bringing in $500 to $1,000 with just a little bit more can bring $10,000 to $30,000. I was on a call yesterday, and a woman sells apples and oranges online. She does $20,000 a month selling apples and oranges online that she doesn't take possession of.
Wow. I would have known that, and that's the difference between apples and oranges. I'm sorry, you set me up there with that. Before we move on, I do want to hear from Irma and Kristen about the idea, because, Irma, you had stated earlier that you have lots of ideas about products, right? And a lot of us do have a lot of ideas about tech products. I do every day. Wow. You know what? I would really love this. I would like to be able to take a picture of shoes and have that shoe designer identified. I think I had it before Penny on Big Bang Theory ever had it. And somebody said, Linda, that's a dumb idea, because you're going to have to program a bunch of stuff into a database. How are you going to do that? Bam. So that's the other thing you don't want. You kill the idea just like that, right? But how did you sift through those ideas to focus in on the one that you felt like was going to be the success?
Yes. And I think I'm coming from a non-business background. So like a lot of the methodologies that I think Joy, Daryl, Kristen are saying, like, I'm recently learning those. So I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who just didn't know anything about how to start something, minus like working for companies that have been doing that work for a while. But for me, like I had a list of a bunch of ideas, like I mentioned earlier. What I found was, like, I was only going back to add ideas to that list. I was never like, pulling them out. And so when I came across my own problem of isolation, that was like the one idea that I had written down that like I did research on, or I went to LinkedIn and like just Google search isolation and saw if anybody was talking about it. Read Medium articles, right? So I did that follow up, and I think because maybe subconsciously there was some motivation there, just because I had faced that problem internally, that I did want to solve for it, and I did want to just fix it and just stop isolation overall. So that was how I did it. I think for every person it's going to be a little bit different. I think if you're coming from more of a business background, or you just have knowledge from like starting your own thing before, or you've been around entrepreneurs your whole life, like I just didn't have that, you probably will have a better sense of like, I should start here. And I think that's what Joy, Daryl, and Kristen have, and Kristen will touch on too. Whereas for me, I basically just like, if I couldn't stop thinking about it, I would go to sleep thinking about it, I would wake up thinking about it. So it was like this constant thing in my life. I would tell people on like calls, like, oh yeah, I'm like looking into this thing, like what's your experience with remote work and isolation? And so because I was doing that, I think that's how I was able to pull that one specifically out of the bucket. But I think it's good to just keep, like, I think overall, like if you keep a list, it really, you might stumble upon something, like it might emerge, as Joy mentioned, like it might emerge from that list, and you might not even have picked up on it before. And so I think those ideas and those problems that you solve are like the most interesting ones. And then to Daryl's point, when I came across the problem, I did think about the long-term vision. I was like, I just like, my North Star is to solve isolation, right? So reverse engineering that, how do you get to that point, right? So is it with a networking tool? Is it with like an email newsletter that just like shows people connecting and it's like happy people like all over the place? So little things like that, where you're kind of like reverse engineering that larger vision, helped me a lot too. And just like really honing in, like, this is what I want to focus on. This is like what I'm thinking about all day. I know it's a problem because there's been research done for many, many years around isolation and its impacts, and then COVID hit. So it ended up being like a nice like dovetail into what we're experiencing all right now, which is like not being near each other, being on virtual calls all day. And so how do we bridge that gap of like the fact that people are apart and we're not used to this at all. So yeah, and I would love to hear like Kristen's thoughts on this too.
I think you guys did a great job answering this. I just want to say there's a number of women in STEM who are on the call, And I would love to see more women build companies based in science, technology, engineering, and math in those 4 areas. I think a lot of people have careers in STEM, they become experts in something, and often then they want to go in a different direction for a business. I mean, Karen Worcester is a great example of a woman who, she was at Lilly for a long time, and now she's working on a drug to help reduce fat cells so it helps diabetic people. And there are alternate use cases for the drug she's developing. You've got Christine McDonald, who is teaching teachers how to code through her company, Codelicious. You've got Stephanie Corliss, who's building Snapship and built a 2-sided marketplace. So you've got people who are looking to hire and people looking for those positions. Less STEM oriented, however, complicated, because whenever you're developing both sides of the marketplace, it's just a bigger challenge. So I think that if you're on the call and you're noodling on an idea, I want everyone to just ask themselves if they can think bigger about whatever the idea is and tinker with the idea. So especially if you're in, whether you're doing tech or if you have access to a lab, like, try to make it yourself. Don't think you have to run off and get somebody else to make it first. There is a lot of ugly prototyping that is done to get to what Facebook looks like now. So I think if we had more women playing with it, trying to make it themselves and doing hard things. And I'm just going to be honest, like, there are levels of difficulty in business, right? I would love to see more women build companies rooted in science, in technology, in engineering, and in math. Those fields are dominated by men. And the only way we change that is by women saying there's enormous gender and racial disparity. Let's be purposeful about changing the game. And that means we need people throughout any stage in their career saying, I'm going to take this on. And there's lots of support systems that are available to you, but do the hard thing and think bigger about it.
And so that leads beautifully into the next question, which really a lot of people want to hear about too, is, okay, so you have the idea, you've decided to do the hard thing, right? You've got the STEM idea, you have a product, you keep revisiting it, it's keeping you awake at night. How do you get started? I mean, I will share with you that when I first tried something years ago, I had a mentor, and that was my first step because I had no clue what to do. And so I reached out to someone who started her own business, going back to what you said earlier, Joy and Kristen, about calling somebody up. And so how do you get started? So let's say I have, I have the dog bones, and that's a silly example, but you have the idea. Where do you go? Where do you start?
I can go really quickly just because my will probably be really short. I think one, definitely just research if there's other folks out there doing what you're doing. I think that's just a good barometer to understand, like, am I going into a new market or am I going into something that's like been there, done that, but it needs innovation. So I think that's a good start. And that gives you confidence too, just in your journey as well, like understanding who's out there. And then I think the second thing, I like to just get started. So I'm not sure if this is the best practice, but I usually like to put up a landing page, which you can do with any sort of website builder out there. There's Card, Squarespace, Wix. Put your value proposition on that landing page. Put a little input for somebody to enter their email address in, and just like send it out. Post it on LinkedIn. Share it with your connections. Ask your family to check it out. And I think that's a great way to just, like, in a very low cost way, it might cost like $5 to just get up a landing page. It might be free if you don't use a domain. And just getting it out there, getting some quick feedback, seeing if there's interest, right? Because the last thing you want to do is like build a business plan and model, and then it just flops. So like for me, if I can like put up the landing page and maybe in the background, do some of that more formal work, that's what I like to do, just because I can work on something for a year, but if I don't have that initial, like, I put it out there, got some feedback, that motivates me, right? That motivates me to keep going and like keep working at it. So that's what I would do in terms of, if you have an idea, just right away, like doing some lightweight research and then getting started with some sort of like landing page that you can get some initial feedback from potential users, or maybe a new market that you haven't thought about just yet.
Awesome. That is great feedback. Kristen, Daryl, where, you know, I have the idea. What do I do next?
You know, I'm very much a hardcore business person, so it's probably gonna always permeate there. But if you're trying to go into business, that means you want to be in the market. The market is made up of buyers and sellers. So you have something that you want to sell. Who are the buyers? You have to know literally who you're going to sell your idea to. Not, you know, healthcare, no, revenue cycle managers who are overseeing teams that spend more time than they need to trying to reconcile end of month books. That's how specific, in my mind, you should be about when you have an idea, who is the buyer. Trying to understand who the buyer is challenging, but I think you have to know who the buyer is in order to begin to stand up this idea into a business. The more general you are, the more challenging it's going to be when you get out there, because the person who really is the beneficiary of your product is who you're trying to get to. But if, you know, you let 1,000 people in, trying to find that person is the challenge. So I think getting started is defining who actually is the customer, who is the person or people that are going to buy your product. It may sound easy, but it's challenging to define who the actual person is, or people, or group.
So is that then, Kristen, is that part of the business plan, or is the first step to, I mean, first of all, you have all of these people on this panel to reach out to get information, right? But is the first step, for example, join Startup Ladies? I mean, how do you have a business plan? If you've never made a business plan, then how do you have a business plan? I mean, I think for Joy and Irma coming out, being in industry and having that background, that's pretty easy. But if you just have a really good idea, what does even a business plan look like? I don't know what that looks like, and I'm a more mature wine in corporate America. So what are your thoughts there?
You work up to a business plan. So there's some customer development that you have to do. So everybody talked about this. You start by Googling it. You figure out who your competitors are. You figure out, how can I be different? And then, to Daryl's point, you have to understand who wants, needs, and is willing to pay for your product or service. And you do that by thinking about, what does the buyer look like? So in the tech world, we would say we create personas, and they're really fun to put together. So you think about, what gender is the person? Sex? How much income are they earning? How many kiddos? How many properties? What types of hobbies do they have? This is particularly important. Where do they spend their time on social media? You need to know that, because you'll have to figure out how to advertise to them and the way you go about telling your story. So you start by figuring out the total addressable market. And that's if you think in terms of a pizza pie, right? You start with the big pizza, and then you think, gosh, that's a lot of people, right? And the example I love to use is deodorant. Anybody on the panel have any idea how much the world spent on deodorant last year? Any guesses? Not even you, Daryl? You don't have a guess? I know you have a guess.
I know it's multiple billions.
Yeah, it was over 70 billion. And deodorant is becoming more westernized, or rather I should say, the globe is accepting, adopting, and practicing how we practice the usage of deodorant. And really, there's 4 ways to deliver it right now, right? There's a roll on, a stick, creams, and then the aerosol. And to me, deodorant cracks me up, because like, it doesn't really eliminate the problem. You still smell bad. It's just like you got like a layer of cucumber on top of a layer of stink. That to me means it's unresolved. Now, let's look at the market. So that means there's a lot of people around the world buying one of those 4 forms of deodorant. And Statista, which is a great resource, has said that I think it's over the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to be spending over $90 billion a year on one of those forms of deodorant. And we all buy it in the same places, right? You might Amazon it, you might get it at Walgreens or CVS, maybe the grocery store. So when you think about like my version of Linda's fancy dog bones would be, I'd like to put a deodorant on that just makes me smell like nothing. Like I would love to just put that on after I'm sweating. It doesn't smell gross and it doesn't smell like a layer of apricot. Like that is so unappealing to me. So, and then like, what if we had that and maybe there were additional use cases for it? Like you could use bacteria to address bacteria, right? So lots of different ways to think about it. The reason I give this example is because you have to think about, would somebody else want to buy my idea, right? So the only way to know for sure is to think about who are the people that, like Linda, might also be interested in the fancy dog stuff. Or in my case, are there other people who are equally annoyed about the fact that there is no great deodorant antiperspirant out there that truly does what they all promise? It could just be in my head, right? Maybe it's like Linda and 4 other people. In my case, maybe I'm the stinkiest person on earth. I mean, that could be the case, right? So you have to figure out, are there enough people out there that want, need, and are willing to pay for your product or service? So you figure out, all right, of this big pizza of all the people buying the deodorant, who might be interested in a 5th version of this? Who might want something really different? So you start thinking about the kinds of people that might want to buy the product. And you have to do 2 things. You have to survey them. Surveys are awesome. People are extraordinarily candid in surveys. They tell you things that you need to know and you never would have imagined. And from surveys, you start seeing patterns, and patterns are really helpful. And then you see perspectives that you never would have considered. From the surveys, you have questions that you're able to then ask in in-person interviews. And those are the things that allow you to dive deep. And once again, you see patterns and you start gaining insights into the way people experience both the problem and how they idealize the solution. So after you have that data, that validates assumptions that you have, and it informs how you go about prototyping or versioning. So that data allows you to prototype version 1. Now that might be a deodorant, that might be some type of package that Joy is offering. It could be a new way that the user experiences Cafecito. So we're always just trying to best understand the customer we serve. And the best way to do that is understanding you have to be in regular communication with them. So you ask, you collect feedback, and based on the feedback, you iterate. And that's ultimately how you get to something called product market fit, which is, can something be out there without you in the room being sold and you're selling more than you're spending? So that's the process. It's not magic. There's just simple steps that you take to go from, I have an idea, to, is there a market that wants, needs, and is willing to pay for the product or service, to, I'm going to launch this, and then we'll get to product market fit.
So I know that we're coming to the end of our time, and I think a conversation like this could go on for a while, especially for those in our audience who are, no kidding, very serious. But I want to make sure that we get to another question that somebody submitted, and then I would like to open it up for you to give your best piece of advice for those in the audience wanting to make that next step. So this question is for everyone. How many hours a day do you put in? And I heard someone last week is, you're never not putting in time when you're an entrepreneur and starting a business. And I think it was a TV show said, you are always, this is what you live and breathe. And it's like, really? Do you ever take any time off? But I think it's a valid point. So how many hours a day, a week do you put in? And anyone on the panel to answer?
How many hours a day or a week do you put
You
in?
put in.
That sounds like a job. If you're a business owner, how many hours, days, or weeks do you own the business?
Oh, every day. So that's the every day. That gave me pause there for a minute, because it was like, okay, that is a good question. Joy, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking about, okay, how many hours before Daryl said that? And it was like, but here's the first thing or the second thing that came to mind, and that is, I think we have to be just as intentional as if you were working for somebody, if not more intentional about the self-care. Because in the beginning, because keep in mind, this is part 2 for me. I've already had part 1, which was a 30-year Lilly career. So I felt like I had a little bit of a cushion, so I didn't have to put in 12 and 14 hours. So in the beginning, I had balance. But as time goes on, then everything kind of blends together. The business just really becomes everything. It's the center of what you're focused on. You wake up thinking about it. You go to bed with all these ideas. You've got many hats on. So you're thinking, if you're not doing and networking and developing and marketing, you're thinking about it. And it becomes really easy to get out of whack. So I just want to, as other folks are thinking about, well, how much time and all that, the second thing that comes to mind is self-care is really important. So I know with my other entrepreneur friends, we remind ourselves of that, because it can be all-consuming, especially when it's something that you're really passionate about. So self-care is just really critical.
And I love that answer. And I'm reminded of something that Kristen said to me is, hey, on the weekends, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not, the weekends are for this, for my mental well-being. And I was like, okay, that is a good answer. But just to take it just a step further, then what is the investment of time? If you're working a full-time job, then how do you do it? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's difficult, if I'm being completely honest. But I think there's definitely obviously workarounds that you can make as you're starting your own thing. I think in the beginning, I was just trying to put in like an hour a day, right in the beginning, when I was like, this is just an idea kind of thing, just an hour a day, just like slowly chipping away at that bigger goal. Now it's definitely different, right? Bye, Joy. Now I basically have to balance my day job with meetings for Cafecito, or like speaking on something, or having following up on what my team is doing. So I, like Daryl said, I think it's an everyday thing. I don't track my hours, unfortunately, so I can't say like a specific number, but it's kind of having like another, I mean, not to call it from like a job, but like it's kind of having like another job on top of what you kind of do, just because you are kind of like the center of it until you bring people on. And so if you wanted to move forward, it's just whenever you have the time and the, of course, energy and the mental capacity to do it, like putting in a little bit in at a time does wonders. And it might take you a year, but I think making small progress every day, just iterating, will make it a lot easier, and maybe take it away from it being like how many hours I have to put in, but more so just like, I'm going to put a little bit in today, and it's going to get me to that next sales call tomorrow, or it's going to get me to that next customer tomorrow, right? So I try to kind of have that mindset a little bit more, instead of going for just like number of hours every week.
Excellent. And that's good advice, because I know many people have their side hustle, and they're trying to take their side hustle, their passion, and flip that into a full-time. So Kristen, what I'd like to ask you is, how do you find someone to help you? So if I really want to do this doggo thing, which I don't, that was a long time ago when I was feeling crafty. And that means hobby. I mean, that was a good definition. That really should have been hobby, not business, right? So how do you get started? If you're out here in this audience, you're like, I don't know what to do next. What's your advice?
We can definitely help you at the Startup Ladies. I'd say set up a one-on-one with me. I do virtual office hours every Friday from 2 to 4. Just visit thestartupladies.org. Under events, go to office hours. Happy to chat with you. attend one of our programs. Our programming is all about educating you, and we do deep dives on topics that are related to building business. So show up. And I think that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but being an active part of a network is going to really help you connect to potential clients. And when you consistently show up and people notice both your presence and absence, then you know you're part of a community. And it's the people in the community who are connected to people outside the community who can be really valuable to you. So you've got to get to know the insiders. So the startup ladies, I mean, our job is to grow the number of women who are starting up scalable companies and help them secure the funding in order to scale. So if you're curious, please feel free to reach out to me, join me for office hours or one of our startup study halls or mental wellness for business programs.
And thank you, everyone. I know we have 1 minute left, and this is what I want to leave you with. Number one, there is a blog that Kristen has on her website. Please visit that. Her website is in the chat, but it's thestartupladies.org. Kristen can definitely answer that last question of the stat that we shared in the beginning on how do you fix 156.2 billion and us getting a very, very small percentage of that. So how do we fix that? Go to Startup Ladies, reach out to Daryl, reach out to Irma, reach out to these panelists to learn from their experience. And the last thing I will leave you with is walk through the fear, fight the imposter syndrome. You know, as Kristen said, move through that because some of the best products that we have today, somebody was afraid of, or somebody just smashed the hamburger, right? So invest in that time, seeking out these resources. I thank you so much for being here. You know, we will have this again, and next time we'll start from, okay, let's talk about show me the money, right? Let's talk about how I get started that way too. I think that's a topic. Show me the money. And so we'll plan for that in 2022. Show me the money. E is for entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day. No one is you. That is your power. Go forth and entrepreneur, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck.